Ladies and gentlemen, we'll come back to order. Does everyone have their folders that everybody's present? All right, well, this time we'll move forward with Chairman Roberts as he presents. He'll identify the sub he's working with, and then we'll move forward from there. If that be appropriate, Mr. Chairman, we'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're operating off LC 344560S. Everybody got that one?
Everybody's looking at that right one, correct? Okay, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I kind of feel like Groundhog Day. Here we go all over again. But with that being said, there's only a few minor changes to the legislation from what we originally passed out. So, again, I will briefly go back through this and touch on a couple of the changes that was made. And basically, I'll go back through section by section, but I'll be brief and short. Under Section 2, we talk about the education, transportational purposes, and we have the definition there. I apologize. I'm looking at a word right here that was supposed to have been changed. It's not changed in this sub. I'm going to circle it and come back, and I'll ask us to make this adjustment. And I'll go on and talk about on line 59 where we talk about infrastructure and services necessary. We need to change that word services to support. That will that actually is from our conversations the word that needs to go in there. So I will ask us to come back and change that as we move forward at the end. Section 2-1, we talk about alternative fuel definitions. Section 2-2 is the same thing with the fee schedule for alternative fuel vehicles. That hasn't changed. Section 3 hasn't changed concerning the governor's powers. Most of you know we've already went through that. This gives the ability, God forbid there be a natural disaster, for us to have a way for us to come back and make those changes. Section 4, where we remove the tax credit for the low emission vehicles, or zero, in other words, the electric car tax credit. Section 4-2 is where we remove the prepaid tax portion that we currently have in law today. Section 4-3 exempts motor fuel from state sales tax part. Section 4-4 is the ceiling on the local taxes. Section 4-5 is not really any changes, just the corresponding code section. We get over to Section 4-8. Here's one of the changes from the last bill that we passed out. As most of you know, under the last bill we passed out, Lost, Host, Most, and all those went into effect July 1, 2015. We're giving them one more year. It goes to July 1, 2016, and that's when it goes up to the 1.25, and it's no longer charged on motor fuel. They asked for a year to give them that period of time to be able to go in and plan, so we're doing that. So that's one of the changes that you see there. Section 4-5 is where we just have to raise the ceiling. Host is 4-10. You'll see there. That's where it moves to July 1 of 16. 4-11 is the definition for transportation purposes. And we need to talk about this. You know, I've had some people call me and say, oh, we're expanding the definition of transportation. We're going to allow state motor fuel tax to be used on all these different things. That's absolutely false. That's inaccurate. It's just, I won't say it's a lie. They're uninformed and uneducated with that. This deals only with the local portion. Not with the state portion, only the local portion. So anybody that calls you and says, or might send something out that says that we're changing the definition for transportation purposes for motor fuel tax in the state of Georgia, again, they're uneducated or they're uninformed. We're not changing it for the state's portion. This is only concerning the local SPLOST. That's all this deals with. Okay, now we've cleared that up. Let's move on to section 4-12. SPLOST is where we talk about SPLOST, and this is where through the expiration, and then after that, then if they renew it, then it's charged. Anything they collect on motor fuel is for transportation purposes. 4-13 is that implementation of that SPLOST. 4-14 is the e-SPLOST, and it's eligible. The expenses and all from education. It's actually, we changed the word in this section. It was changed over to support, so we don't have to go back and change it here. It was just in that first section. But you see here, here's the definition right here that relates to transportation purposes for the education standpoint. Basically, anything that supports that capital outlay, that bus, anything that's used to support that bus, anything from gas or diesel to paying the salary to whatever parts, anywhere with the bus barn or whatever it may be, as long as it can support that capital project, it is eligible for this. Section 4-5 is the most, and that goes through the expiration, and then it's on motor fuel, excising, and index it is where we get to 4-16. That part hasn't changed. We're still at 29.2 cent per gallon on gas, 33 on diesel fuel, and that's the rate that's equivalent to each other. And then we go down through and we talk about the excising part. The indexing part of it, where that part hadn't changed. That's the same as the last bill. A lot of this is cleanup language as we get over to 4-17 where we repeal the second motor fuel. 5-1 is we have to go through, as you will see, what you see through these next couple of pages is where we have to go in from a local standpoint and allow that to increase by 0.5 here, 0.5 there. I mean, it's just as you go all the way through, you will see that. Section 6.1, there again is where we talk about the infrastructure bank. Now, one of the things that you didn't see in there that was in the bill before is we didn't allow local governments to charge local sales tax on diesel. We heard from our local governments. They had a lot of concerns about that. They were going to lose a lot of revenue, and it was going to put a lot of them in a deficit. So we agreed that we would come back and allow that. So let me walk you through the changes that were made in this piece of legislation from the one you have today to the one we passed out the other day. There's really only 4. We have a 1-year sunset period on the lost and the host and the most and all that. And when I say sunset, we go from July 1 of 2015 to July 1 of 2016. That's the change that was made there. Local taxes on diesel fuel will be allowed under this bill, as they weren't not allowed in the bill that we passed out the other day. We put the additional language in there to ensure that locals didn't violate their cap on their tax rates. And then we actually also took out one of the other asks was that we included transportation in level 1 projects in our last bill. Level 1 projects are projects that were negotiated, and there was a list of them from cities and counties that were working together to try to figure out their SPLOST negotiations, and if they couldn't reach an agreement, they were allowed to still spend on jails, courthouses, those things necessary until they could get the split agreed upon, but that way they didn't have to shut down any services. So we had added transportation purposes to that. There was some concern there that it could possibly be abused. We listened to them and we took that out. I will tell you that the bill you now have in front of you, my understanding, and I could be wrong, but we finally have basically our cities and our counties and our school boards all in agreement on this. Now, to have every single one of them say that, as far as your locals, that's not necessarily true. I understand we do have some pockets here in the state of Georgia. There may be a county or a city in certain areas of the state that have some issues with it, but as far as from their organizations now, we have people working together in this piece of legislation. With that being said, I know that was quick, but that's basically the only changes that was made. Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to try to answer any questions.
Appreciate the presentation and highlighting the changes. Do we have any questions at this time from the committee? Chairman Ronders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Roberts, me and you have talked about this before, and I just don't want it lost in confusion, but on page 2, line 59, as well as page 11, line 353, it's the same wording, so you can look on page 2 for everybody. Line 59, after the word infrastructure, because it doesn't specifically show legislative intent, if you feel it's appropriate, and I'll refer to you, I'd like to add at the appropriate time through amendment form /personnel or comma personnel, comma, and services necessary. It doesn't say personnel specifically, and I've heard a little bit about that.
Chairman Reinders, I appreciate we're going to change the word services to support, and it's my understanding that support includes what you're talking about there from personnel standpoint. Anything that helps to support that capital project, which is that bus, comes underneath that word.
So you plan on line 59 and line 353 to change services to support?
353.
It's the same wording.
Support is already on 354.
353? I'm sorry, I could be looking at it wrong.
Yeah.
But
to and from educational facilities in the state and all accompanying infrastructure and support necessary. They changed it there.
Okay, I was looking at 353. Okay, good enough.
Yeah.
So you feel like the support, by definition, will include personnel?
Yes, sir. I do.
Thank you.
Representative Waits.
Sir, at the appropriate time, I'd like to offer a amendment.
You'll be recognized at that time. Thank you. Chairman Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also, at the appropriate time, I'd like to be recognized for an amendment.
That will take place in just a minute. Thank you. So noted. Chairman Reiner, did you have another comment?
No, sir.
Any other questions? Okay, I think our posture at this time is to, Mr. Chairman, anything else you would like to bring to us before we...
No, again, I would just, like to thank you and Chairman Hamilton and the Dean and Chairman England and all for continuing to work throughout this year with us on this important piece of legislation. I want to thank the committee for their indulgence. I know that y'all are probably as tired of looking at me as I am of sitting down here presenting this piece of legislation, so I do thank you for your patience. I do thank everyone for their input. There's been a lot of people that's come and had conversations with me about this, and I appreciate those conversations. Again, I will say this, as we move this bill forward, it's still a work in progress. We're still trying to get a bill that we believe is going to move this state forward when it comes to transportation. I believe that we have gotten to that point. We have finally reached a point that I believe that we have a good piece of legislation that will allow us, not only now but down the road, to be able to have more funding for transportation and to help to move the state forward. With that being said, Mr. Chairman, I would offer at the appropriate time as well on line 59 that we change the word services to support.
Mr. Counsel, could we consider that a Scribner's error and correction, or do we have to do a formal amendment on that?
I'm a little bit reluctant to call it a scrivener's error.
I kind of thought you might be, but I just thought I'd check you on it.
Since I was the scrivener.
Oh, I thought your name was something else. I'm sorry, Mr. Kelsey.
By the way, Mr. Chairman, we can do that. We could do it as a scrivener's error if need be, or we could do it as an amendment, whichever.
Let's do it as an amendment, Mr. Chairman. Make sure so.
I was just checking to see if he was willing to admit a mistake every now and then. But, and the other thing, Mr. Chairman, nobody's more ready for you to come back up and assume this seat than I am. I can assure you of that.
Well, and let me also say, I mean, Rick has done a great job. We appreciate it, Rick. I mean, we have given him late notice many times on amendments, and he has done an outstanding job, and I haven't appropriately thanked him, but I want to do so now. Thank you, Rick. I appreciate you.
All right. Well, I think we're in the right process. We're on notice that there's 3 possible amendments, but at this time, I'm going to look around this committee and see if there's a motion on the substitute to House Bill 170, which is LC 344560S. I hear a motion and a second. All right. At this time now, we will take up the amendments. And we'll start with Representative Waits.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, I want to commend our sitting chairman for his work on this bill. I think it's
Representative
terrific.
Waits, excuse me. I think
Yes.
probably I'm a little bit out of order. It's my fault. Probably should go with the chairman's amendment first, since he was. We want to keep the council happy in case we have any more questions. So. I'm going to, if it's okay with you, your pressure, I'll retreat back and go back to the chairman, and let's clear up that one matter there, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make a motion that we amend LC 344560S on line 59 and strike the word services and add the word support in its place.
Here's a motion and a second. All those in favor of making that correction that was not a scrivener's error, but it was an error, let it be known by saying aye. Opposed, no.
Thank you, Mr.
So now we have the language in front of us perfected to this point. So at this point in time, Representative Waits, we'll hear from you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank our chairman for the terrific work he's done on House Bill 170. I think this is a step in the right direction toward transit in Georgia. I'd like to offer an amendment with respect to women and minority business participation. You will see it in front of you right now. I think it's AM 390095. Again, I believe that the state has a very unique and historic opportunity to demonstrate its commitment to women and minority business owners. Currently, right now, the state of Georgia has a participation rate of less than 3% in terms of our tax dollars going toward minority-owned businesses. These figures can be found on the state DOT website. It is also my belief that there was some concerns that I may have been asking for preferential treatment as well as affirmative action. And I think when you look at these numbers, they reflect the need for some type of plan to be in place. I have attached a copy of a commitment from the DOT Commissioner, Mr. McMurray, as well as members of the State Transit Board, which is in line with the amendment that I've asked. And I'd like to read the amendment, sir, if that's in order.
Let's make sure now everybody has a copy of the Waits Amendment. Is that correct?
Yes.
For them.
39-0095.
All right. Now, what would you like to present to us now?
Yes, sir. That is the amendment that I have to present to you today, which is in line with the commitment that the DOT already has in front of us to do administratively.
Okay. We have just a moment. We have a suggestion on the amendment.
Please.
Council, if we
I'd say that this is drafted to an earlier version of the bill, but it still fits in nicely. We just have to change the line numbers to lines 60 and 61. So it's not modified.
Thank you.
I wanted for clarity's sake.
Thank you, sir.
Did everyone here move it up to line 60 and 61? Now, please clarify for me again what you would like. I have your amendment, have the clarification, and you would like to make a further comment?
Yes, sir. Initially, to put a participation goal in place, there has to be a disparity study in place. And right now, on the state level, we don't have that in place. And so the amendment simply states that every 3 years, a state disparity study would be conducted to determine the number of women in minority business enterprises that are currently utilized for contracts within the State Department. It also states that upon that evaluation and study, that the department will adopt some type of participation plan and/or scoring process that reflects those findings. This would be perfectly in line with what the commissioner as well as the state DOT board has committed to. And this letter is dated March 2nd of 2015.
Anything else for a take?
No, sir. Thank you.
Any questions from the committee members for Representative Waits? Chairman Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, isn't it true that we currently have this process in place? Also, that that if the bids are low enough, that they'll get the contract without having it to be based on anything other than the work performed?
I'm sure the gentleman knows of what he speaks and believes of what he speaks. Chairman Ronders.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the amendment. Just a couple questions, if I may. How did you come up with the arbitrary figure of 3 years?
It was our feeling that to do that on an annual basis would be too costly to the state and a burden to the state.
When you say our, who is our? You said our feeling. Who is our?
Our feeling?
Yeah, you said our feeling was every year would be too costly to the state.
Absolutely. I took into consideration the cost to the state when I asked for the amendment.
Why not 5? Why not 10?
I would be happy with 5.
Okay. Additional question, if I may?
Yes, sir.
Do you know the cost of this particular study?
I do not, but there's currently one underway right now.
I'm sorry?
There's currently a study underway right now on the federal level.
Help me understand. So
Absolutely.
The feds already do this?
Joshua was here. I believe he can speak to this dynamic. However, there is currently a federal disparity study underway that's been contracted by the state of Georgia. We've asked them to expand this to the state level.
I'm going to have to ask for a little clarification from DOT on that.
And finally, I just wonder if we would need a physical note on anything like this if we're asking a department for a cost estimate and we don't know what it is.
That information has been requested.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I also wanted to speak to Representative Benton.
Just a moment.
Yes, sir.
I think I have a burning question here from Representative Williams, and I'm going to allow you a chance to come back.
Let me defer because my question was a little bit further back, but I will come back with the question.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Currently, there is no state minority, women or minority participation plan in place. Those are at the federal level currently. The 15% goal is at the federal level. There's no state plan in place right now for women.
Thank you, ma'am. Here's some more clarification on the issue. Chairman Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Currently, the feds do not require a particular amount. All the feds require is that the state has an amount, and they require them that they do a study every 3 years. That's where the 3 years comes in. The feds requires that the state goes in and does a disparity study. The feds themselves do not have a percentage or a requirement. Their only requirement is that the state has a plan in place.
Are you referring to the 15% participation plan?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah. And furthermore, we are doing we are in the process right now, the RFQ, Chairman Reinders. The commissioner at the department and y'all have the letter there that he has written, has agreed to go in and do a state study as well, which I believe is the way for us to go. I don't believe that, in all honesty, we need to codify this within law, because that means that it can go up or down. We're already doing it for 3 years anyway from the feds, and we've got a commitment now from the commissioner and the board as well that they will continue to look at this from a state level.
Mr. Waller, do you have anything any light you can shed on this subject? Very briefly.
I don't have the cost data in front of me, so I don't know what to that point, I don't know what the cost would be.
Okay.
The RFQ is out right now on the federal part. They don't. It's my understanding they have just put out that bid, so the department doesn't even know what the study's going to be from the federal side of it, much less from the state side just yet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I wanted to state, excuse me, for clarification, and this has been a very fluid bill, and it's been kind of hard keeping up with it sometimes. So we've chased it around, and even from last week, we've seen some things change. And I want to say, with all due respect, and the lady from Atlanta has done a fantastic job. Many of us have talked about this thing nonstop, and I'll be very honest with you. This letter of commitment to do what needs to be done, the disparity study, was not in place when this amendment was originally brought. I think the letter addresses the concerns, and I believe everybody until they prove me wrong. And as far as I'm concerned, signature of Mr. McMurray and Mr. Grantham is fine enough with me, because it's not how we get it, it's how you get. And I think that there's a good faith effort being shown here, and I'd like to see them have the opportunity to produce what they have proposed.
Thank you. Any other comments this time? The chair is torn on the proper posture here. Certainly respect representatives' rights to bring these amendments, and certainly appreciate the attention that's been drawn to the amendments and to this situation. Certainly do believe also that after some years of experience with the department over the years, I think there's a conscious effort that's in place per federal regulation and per trying to do the right thing with our transportation spending. So at this point in time, the chair is going to rule that as well intended as the amendments are, that we will not consider these two amendments this time, that we will defer and welcome, and we'll work with the representative to come back after the disparity study is done, and then we'll consider any action that may be necessary that can come from this body as we work with the Department of Transportation. Now we'll go on to the Hamilton amendment. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring for you Amendment AM 0673. For any of you that happen to be around the Capitol, this is the exact language proposed as an amendment that just passed as a substitute to House Bill 175 in the Ways and Means Sales Tax Subcommittee earlier today. And basically, the reason that I have an interest in this is that my commitment has been to get every dollar that's dedicated to transportation to actually go to transportation. And what this does, by eliminating the credit on jet fuel, it puts $23 million a year of money into transportation. And the way that it's set up under federal law, the first 2 years, there's a moratorium. So in the fiscal year 2016 and 2017, we'll be adding $23 million to the coffers to be able to use from that. Thereafter, it'll also free up about $2 million that we currently spend in airports that we can use elsewhere. And then this $23 million at present run rate is be able to use for noise mitigation, work at airports, and state aviation programs. And I know that we have a desire to move away from federal funds, but there is also a matching component of that also that with a 5% state match and a 5% local match, you can get a 90% match in federal funds. And so that's what this amendment does, and I would offer this consideration to this bill. And again, my desire in this is to take all the transportation dollars that we possibly can and use them for transportation. I think this is a good effort, a good step in that direction.
Any questions on the Hamilton amendment? Would the author like to comment?
I would like to comment to the fact that just so we're clear on this, any state funds that are collected off motor fuel can be spent throughout the state of Georgia on airports. Any local has to be spent on that airport from which it originates. But it does give us a lot more money when it comes to airports in this state of Georgia. I'm at the committee's will, okay with this, but that clarification we need to make sure, because there's been some issues that has arisen. But the chairman is correct in what he speaks. But to make sure everybody understands, because some people think that we get to use this money only at certain airports, but all state dollars collected can be spent at any airport in the state of Georgia. Local will stay at that particular airport.
I don't see any questions. Any follow-up, Chairman Hamilton, to your amendment?
No, just ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. At this time, we will do that. We will consider the Hamilton amendment to LC 344560S. Do I hear a motion? Second. All those in favor, let it know by saying aye. Aye. Okay. Are there any other amendments?
You want to ask if anybody opposed?
Sir. All opposed? I had a good ear for that. That's it. Any other amendments? I'll get the next one right. That was up. Yes. Yes. All right. Now we need a motion on the. Now, make sure we get the right posture again. I don't see any other motions to amendments. We'll be considering LC 30, substitute to House Bill 170, LC 344560S as amended. Do I hear a motion? Motion. As a motion, do I hear a second? Second. Hear a second. All those in favor, let it know by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. We have an abstention and one no, I think, or a couple no's, but the bill carries, and we'll move it back to rules with a do pass recommendation. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your service.
And we're going to meet Wednesday.
Excuse me, Wednesday at 3 in this room? Wednesday at 3 in this room. And we have some more business to take up. Thank you all.